right, fellas. So I've been fielding some of the emails we got since our interview with Mark Schlabach. Everybody had a blast with that. Lots and lots of great stuff there for people who didn't get a chance to catch that. We definitely encourage you to go back to episode 6 and check that out. One thing folks did tell us was, guys, you guys wrapped it up with Mark and you didn't really give a whole lot of thoughts from yourselves as far as kind of what's going to happen in 2019 college football season. So I figure we can touch on some of that tonight. You guys good with that?
Crickets.
That's not what we need here, fellas. That's not what we need on this show at all.
Oh, wait, this is an audio thing.
Oh, man, I was making faces. My bad. Yeah, why not? We can do that.
This is radio, fellas. Let's get with the program. It's radio.
Onboard computer synchronization.
Now entering the nexus of geekery and guy world. In 3, 2, 1, mark.
Hello, IT? Have you tried turning it off and on again?
This is the Dudes in Hyperspace podcast, a service of Shark Flight Publishing.
Hey kids, welcome back to episode 7 of the Dudes in Hyperspace podcast. I am your host, Ian J. Malone. Got lots of stuff on tap tonight to get to. Had D23 this weekend out in Burbank, so lots of big news to break out of that. Also got news on Spider-Man and his future with the MCU, which is not very good, apparently. Also news on the upcoming Breaking Bad movie. Just lots of cool stuff happening in the greater non-geek world. Obviously, we are straight into college football season. We had the Week 0 matchup this week with Florida and Miami, and going to definitely touch on that with Dave and the other guys. Also touch on some more college football stuff, maybe even make some picks for Week 1 coming up. So, as usual, if you've got questions, you know where to find us. We're online at dudesinhyperspace.com. You can also follow us on Facebook and Twitter at The Hyperdudes. Shoot us a question via email if you want, dudesinhyperspace@gmail.com. If you want to tweet us, again, that's at The Hyperdudes. Just hit us up with the hashtag DudeMail, and we would love to hear what you've got to say. So, as mentioned, I got guys who hang with me for this little voyage. So, Dave Daniels, Scott Esther, how we doing this evening?
Doing great. Just coming off a weekend where I was down at the game, of which will not be mentioned from here on. And I enjoyed myself. Doing really well.
I definitely want to pick your brain on that experience. I'm on record as not being a fan of neutral site games at all for college football. They annoy the crap out of me. But I'll be interested to catch your take on what that particular game was like. Scott, what's going on with you, man?
Hey, coming out of a weekend in Louisville, Kentucky, doing some work-related things, but got a chance to check out all the announcements from D23 Expo. Looking forward to getting into that, and then obviously previewing what we're going to talk about here on the upcoming week. It's game week for us Seminoles, and that's a good thing.
I had but one request of you when you went to Louisville, and that was that you did sample some of the local bourbon for me while you were there. Did you accommodate said request?
I certainly did, and I wasn't sure if I got it right the first time, so I tried 2 or 3 more times to get it right, and after a while I couldn't remember if I was doing it right, so I tried some more, but you were certainly right. Well represented.
That is dedication, sir. That's why you're on this podcast, because we're professionals, and we get it right. No matter how many times it takes, we nail it. If we had a gag reel on this show, people would really know just how true that is.
There we go.
All right, so as mentioned, D23, lots of stuff going on there. That segues us nicely. What do you say we hit the news?
And now the news.
So, Disney held its annual D23 Expo this past weekend in Burbank, California. Naturally, lots of big announcements came out of that, not the least of which was a new sizzle reel, quote-unquote, on Star Wars The Rise of Skywalker. If you want to check that out, go hit up our Facebook or Twitter pages. They're definitely right there for you to see. Lots of the emphasis, though, for this particular event centered on Disney's streaming platform that's going to be coming out in November, that being, of course, Disney+. A couple of the things that were represented this year, The Mandalorian, in case you've been living under a rock, that's the first live-action Star Wars series. It's going to star Pedro Pascal and Carl Weathers, and going to be set 5 years after the events of Return of the Jedi. From what I'm told, it's going to deal heavily with the quote-unquote Unknown Regions. Trailer for that looked absolutely fantastic. They rolled it out this past weekend. That is also online. You can go check it out. Another thing that was confirmed, and I was extremely happy about this, we can touch on it if the guys want. Ewan McGregor will be coming back to reprise his role as Obi Wan Kenobi for what Screen Rant is reporting is a 6-episode miniseries on Disney Plus that will, in all likelihood, tackle his time on Tatooine in between Revenge of the Sith and A New Hope. So lots of really great stories to mine there. We can get into that. Stepping outside of Star Wars, fans also got updates on several of the Marvel projects which are going to stream on Disney Plus. Among these were The Falcon and the Winter Soldier, WandaVision, What If, and Loki got its own director. So, sticking with the superhero bit, and as we talked about up top, Spider-Man fans got some rather tragic news last week. The internet all but exploded when news broke that Sony Pictures and Marvel Studios have officially walked away from each other with regard to Spider-Man and the MCU. You'll remember after Sony Pictures had its big hack scandal a couple of years ago, one of the things that came of that was a deal to bring Spider-Man in the form of Tom Holland to the Marvel Cinematic Universe. He first showed up in Civil War and then has been in every Avengers movie since, and we hoped for a long and profitable future there, but apparently that was not to be. Lots of finger pointing going on as to whose fault this is, whether it's Marvel Studios or whether it's Sony. Naturally, the truth is probably somewhere in the middle, but one thing that we do know for certain is that as of this moment, Peter Parker will be nowhere near the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and that is a shame. Finally, last story on the news this evening, the long-rumored Breaking Bad movie, El Camino, was officially confirmed this past weekend, and much to the delight of fans, it's going to hit small screens, or it's going to hit screens a lot sooner than fans originally thought. It's just not going to be on the big screens. It was announced that Netflix is actually going to carry this film, and it is coming to you via that streaming service October 11th of this year. If you're not a Netflix subscriber, it's also suspected that AMC is going to broadcast it terrestrially at some point down the line. They just haven't announced a date yet for that. El Camino will star Aaron Paul as Jesse Pinkman and also feature the return of multi-time Emmy winner Bryan Cranston as the former high school chemistry teacher turned meth cook and kingpin Walter White. And last note on that, the events of El Camino are expected to pick up immediately in the aftermath of the Breaking Bad finale. So that's your news, fellas. D23. A lot of stuff covered there. Star Wars was obviously a big part of that. Dave, I'll start with you. Give me one thing right off the top there that you really got excited about.
Obi-Wan. That was it, man. I mean, and all you got out of that was him walking out on stage and asking Kathleen, ask me if I'm going to play Obi-Wan. And the answer was yes, and that's it, man. That's something I've wanted to see for a while. I hope that they do tackle that time on Tatooine because I think it's a unique story. It still has a little bit of the Skywalker smell to it, so I'm good with that. I think that that's something that we've wanted for a very long time, and it's finally going to happen.
Yeah, I think of all the characters from the original series and everything, Kenobi to me was the one that I thought they could go the deepest into. Obviously, he survived through the Order 66 and everything else. So what happened from that time until the time we see him in A New Hope? And I get that he spent some time shadowing Luke as he grows up on Tatooine, but really, what was his life like? What was he doing? And John Jackson Miller's book goes into that quite a bit, and so I'm wondering how closely they're going to follow that storyline, or if they're going to go in a completely different direction.
I'm so happy you touched on that book because that's exactly where I was going. A lot has been made of what happened to Ben Kenobi when he was on Tatooine. I don't think any of those stories nailed it the way that Miller's book did. And I've read it a couple of times over now. It was one of the Star Wars books that I was really sad to see leave canon. For those who don't know what I'm talking about, this is one of the quote-unquote Star Wars Legends books, and it tackles this very thing. It picks up immediately in the aftermath of Revenge of the Sith when Ben Kenobi touches down with a baby in his arms looking for a place to hide out. And this is probably going to be a little before the time of a lot of our listeners, but there was an old Western show back in the day called The Rifleman, and this was the rifleman with a lightsaber. It's about the drifter who rolls through town, dusty, desolate town. You've got, small town, blue-collar farmers essentially looking to make their way of things, battling everything from the elements to the natives who want no part of their being there. and he gets wrapped up in the community of their plight and who they are. So in that light, me being a Western guy, it was a great book to read. The other thing, and probably the biggest thing that I think nailed this story, and Disney would be very wise to adhere to this, was it very much delved into the psyche of Obi Wan Kenobi when he touches down on Tatooine. This is a guy at that point that you've got to remember has lost everything. All of his he grew up in the Jedi Temple. It's not like he came into this late, and could go back to old habits whenever all of that went away. He was a total product of the Jedi Order, and he just lost all of that. Everybody he ever called friend, everybody he ever called family, most of them are dead now, and he saw it happen right in front of his eyes. So he knows he's got one mission, and that is to protect this kid. But at the same time, he can't not come face to face with that kind of grief, when he's essentially forced into solitude. He can't figure out the training that Yoda tried to give him to be able to commune with Qui-Gon. Nothing is going right. And the other thing that he's battling is his innate desire to want to help people. His whole life has been trained to go out and help the less fortunate, to serve justice, to be a Jedi. And now he knows if he picks his head up to help somebody who's having a hard time, he risks revealing himself and thereby revealing Luke. So he's got to turn a blind eye and walk away and let bad things happen to good people. So that's kind of the gist of what you get in Kenobi is Ben learning to find his way in a new world after the Jedi Order, but also coming to grips with who he is and where he is in life. And from a character standpoint, it was probably one of the best Star Wars books I ever read. And there have been some good ones out there. There have been some that were not very good, but that was by far one of my favorite Star Wars books of all time. So I say all that to say, if there's anybody from Disney listening to this, you have the template for your story. Go get it. Call John Jackson Miller, get him on the phone, and make us a kick-ass 6-episode series. So, all right, well, Mandalorian trailer. What did you guys think of that?
Lots of action. I'm really excited about that. I really thought that the way that it's set up, the way that it appears to be, the way this is put together, it looks good. It's got some good actors in it. I mean, not only does it have the two that you mentioned, but it's also got, and I can never remember his name. He's one of those that guy actors.
Yeah.
But the bad guy from Breaking Bad, from Gus Fring from Breaking Bad.
Oh, yeah. Natalie totally pinged that when we watched the trailer the other night. I was like, no way.
And he is a fantastic actor. He did really, really well. He plays that sneaky kind of bad guy that's in that, but that plays a good guy kind of. I don't know what his character will be like in The Mandalorian.
Yeah.
But I'm excited to see what he can bring to that, and I think overall it's gonna be a good show. I'm really looking forward to that as well.
Scott, Mandalorian, what'd you think of the trailer?
I was blown away by it. I'm really looking forward to seeing what sort of we've always seen throughout the series and throughout the universe what the underbelly of the universe look like, and now we get to see it from a completely different angle. And so it'll be interesting to see if we, how fans identify with these characters and how they handle themselves, sort of the anti-hero model. But sometimes it's cool to be bad. And I'm kind of looking forward to seeing whether or not they can pull this off.
I think if we learned anything from Star Wars Rebels, it is that Star Wars can be really, really, really good in the long-form format that television brings to you, particularly when Dave Filoni is involved. And Star Wars fans know that name very well. He was one of the creators behind The Clone Wars, was one of the creators behind Star Wars Rebels. He is also one of the key players behind the scenes with Jon Favreau on The Mandalorian. So that's a guy who knows Star Wars, studied at the feet of George Lucas. He's given us some of the finest Star Wars that we've ever seen outside of the movies. So the fact that he's involved alone gives me tons of hope for this series. I got to tell you, I was looking forward to seeing this, but the trailer really did hook me in a lot more than I thought it would. I love the whole gunslinger mentality, as we talked about with Kenobi, the whole Western thing. This very much had that kind of attitude to it. So I will look forward to see where this goes. My only question is how much is it going to tie to the films? Because I think the one complaint we all had with Episode 7 when we walked in to see it in 15? 17, whatever it was. The one complaint we had was, wait, how are we back here? It was like watching Star Wars all over again, the first one. You've got the Empire, you've got the Rebellion, only they just rebranded it with new names, and we all said, well, crap, we won Endor. I mean, the Empire fell. We're supposed to have peace, and I mean, like, how did we get back here to getting our butts kicked? Like, you guys are the worst rebellion ever. What happened? And it is my hope that we will get more of that story told here. I know they've started to tell a lot of that in the books, but frankly, we don't all have time to go out and read a whole bunch of novels to get the story that we wanted to begin with. So it's kind of my hope that we're going to get that. The fact that this is set 5 years after Return of the Jedi, I'm hoping that it's not going to be a series of one-offs, that they really flesh out the mythology of what happened in that 30 years' time.
And I think too with Mandalorian that there's hopefully there's a big focus on the bounty hunter aspect of Star Wars. I mean, obviously, you know, Boba Fett and things are there, but you know, there's a story behind Bosk, and there's a story behind IG-88. You know, there's a lot of things out there that I like to see them go down to find out how these guys came to be, you know, standing on the deck there when it was time to go find Solo. Like, who are these guys? Why were they the top bounty hunters? Well, let's go tell those stories and find that out. And hopefully, the Mandalorian tracks some of those things down.
Sure, and well, I mean, and let's not forget the show is called The Mandalorian, and the Mandalorians have a ton of history behind them that you can tap into. The different wars and feuds between the houses, a lot of that's played out in Star Wars Rebels. I mean, the Mandalorian history in and of itself has got a ton of material that they could go in and mine for this. Who is this guy? Is he still connected to that world? What happened to Mandalore? What is it now? All of those are stories that they can tell. God help us all if they get into the whole Darksaber story. That would be fantastic. I see a live-action Darksaber, man, I'll blast out of my seat.
That's crazy. And then, you know, obviously they touched on this in the Clone Wars series as well, and even Obi-Wan's connection to the Mandalorians, and I mean, it's good. I'm really looking forward to seeing how they pull all these pieces together.
Yep.
Yeah, so Scott, if you hadn't had the opportunity to watch Star Wars Rebels, there's a lot of that's explored. Not the IG-88 stuff, but just the actual Mandalorian, some of the history and some of the lore behind them that goes into there. And Rebels is a fantastic series if you haven't had the opportunity to watch it yet.
Rebels is arguably the best thing to come out of Star Wars since Disney purchased Lucasfilm. It's better than anything we've seen on screen, frankly. And again, it has the luxury of being able to have 5 full seasons of television, so you can tell a lot of story. Whereas with a film, you've got 2.5 hours. So I give them that. But yeah, I mean, there was stuff in Star Wars Rebels, man. That, I mean, Dave and I we were texting each other as it was happening. It was so very good.
Yeah, I missed the Rebels on the Disney Channel through cable when it came through. Knowing that it was there, hoping that I'd be able to find it on some sort of service after the seasons went by.
Yeah.
So now I'm, you know, that alone to me is worth the, you know, $7 or $8 that this Disney Plus is going to be here on a monthly basis. So, not to mention, you know, access anytime I want to, you know, any of the stories and any of the movies and anything else that comes along with it.
I will say
it's well worth the price.
They're promoting a deal, and I don't know if this matters to anybody, but they are promoting a bundle deal where for $12.99 a month, you get Disney Plus, Hulu, and ESPN Plus. So I don't know that ESPN Plus matters to me. That seems like it's going to be a whole lot of underwater volleyball and stuff like that. But I mean, they're pushing it. But if you don't have Hulu, it'd be nice to be able to bundle that. I freaking love me some Hulu, man.
Well, I think some of the soccer that I enjoy is going to come on ESPN Plus. You guys don't have to watch it, but I'll probably enjoy the. It'll come on right after that underwater volleyball, I think.
There you go.
Well, they're also doing another deal where if you pay for the first 3 years of it ahead of time, so obviously just paying it up front, you're basically going to be paying about $5.83 a month for the first 3 years that you have the program.
Right.
So I think that would be worth it just to get. You know, I mean, you're going to pay it all up front, but if you're going to get all this content going through, and if Clone Wars is there, and I think they might be adding some more episodes to that as well, and that was a lot of fun to go back and watch with, you know, Ahsoka Tano and seeing some of that stuff, and that's another fantastic series. Not as good as Rebels, but it was still fantastic.
Well, Rebels got back to more of that swashbuckling, you know, fun adventure side of Star Wars. Clone Wars was a deep series. It was a series about war. And it's only going to be as deep as a Star Wars cartoon series can be. But even still, they tackle a lot of really heavy-duty topics about loss and grief and decisions and consequences and big, big, big stakes. It hit on a personal level, character-wise, in a way that you had not seen Star Wars do before. And I did hear someone say, and I do agree with this point, Clone Wars makes the prequels an entirely different watch. Because you watch episode 2, and yes, it's whiny. You watch episode 3, and yes, it's whiny. You watch Clone Wars, and it fleshes out that 10 years that took place between those two films. And when you get to Order 66 after you've watched the Clone Wars, and you've seen what the Jedi went through with those guys at their sides, and the friendships and the bonds that those guys made, very much kind of a brothers-in-arms type of a deal, it breaks your heart. I mean, when Palpatine does something just so cold as to flip a switch in those guys, and they turn against guys that not 30 seconds prior to that moment they would have laid their lives on the line for, and all of a sudden, they're wiping them out. It's a brutal thing to see unfold, and Clone Wars is what put the gravitas into that.
Yeah, I totally agree with that.
It did some other things, too, that won't just depress the living crap out of you. but it was a good series. It really was. So Rebels, though, Scott, most definitely, man. Sit down and watch that one with your kids.
No, it is high on the list.
Yeah, that's one to sit down and watch with the kiddos. We had a blast with that in our house.
And you get a fantastic new lightsaber that you've not seen before.
Talking about Ezra's first one?
Yep.
Yeah,
absolutely. So
I'm
it's
all
always
about
fun
it.
to
Let's
see that
see it.
stuff go through.
Well, and you also get kind of early glimpses of the Kylo Ren lightsaber toward the end. There's one scene where they stumble across some very old ties to the Jedi, and you get to see what one of those lightsabers looks like when it actually works. Not like the jury-rigged Kylo version that snap, crackle, pops all over the place. So anyway, well, while we're on the topic of new Resistance movies or whatever they're calling that trilogy, Sizzle Reel gave us some new stuff to talk about. I don't really consider these spoilers because if they were real spoilers, they wouldn't put them in the trailers. Lucasfilm's smarter than that. So they put this stuff out there for a reason. First thing that caught my attention was a Sith Ray with a lightsaber pike, which you also saw in Star Wars Rebels. So what'd you guys take away from the Sizzle Reel? Anything grab you?
If you look at the part where C-3PO is shown up on screen for a couple of seconds, his eyes are also red in that. So I have a feeling that it's got to be a dream sequence or something going on with that. It was interesting to see the fight scene. It looks like it takes place on what would be the Death Star from what we've seen from the other stuff coming through where Rey versus Kylo.
Yeah.
But again, there's really nothing. I'm excited about it because I think looking at and I put this on Twitter. I don't want to get excited about this, but looking at some of the old footage coming through and how they're tying some of it together, even having a little Jake Lloyd out there, is getting me a little more excited about it. But is there really anything in there that's going to be substantial?
In the Sizzle Reel?
From the reel, yeah. Is there anything that we saw in there that we really think is going to flesh out the way that they're trying to make it seem?
Yeah, no, it's all visuals to grab you and draw you in. The Sith Ray was interesting. That will most certainly come out as a dream I would imagine as a dream sequence. There's no way they're going to turn her, at least not for the long term. But or she's a clone or something like that. We'll just have to wait and see. But I don't know, man. I'm cautiously optimistic about Episode 9. For the first time with Star Wars, I will walk into it with absolutely zero expectations. And if it sucks, I'll walk out, shrug, and say, well, they gave it their best shot. They had a mess to clean up, and they didn't do it. Best case scenario, I walk out and say, man, they really circled the wagons and brought it home in the end. I didn't like Last Jedi. I thought that Force Awakens was a fun nostalgia trip, but when the rubber met the road in the end, they told their story and they did it well. I'll have one of those two reactions.
As I look at some of the things that came through that sort of next teaser trailer, to me it was I did enjoy the view of the starships coming in, and taking a look at some of the additions there, some of the stalwart ships that are still in the class, and then trying to figure out how did they end up rebuilding off of the devastation towards the end of the Last Jedi. It was all but a complete and total wipeout of the rebel fleet and what's going on there. So how do they come back from that? How do they rebuild from that? Hopefully they give us some insight into how that all takes place.
Well, I do know that there's, I believe, a 5-year jump between Last Jedi to Rise of Skywalker. So somebody's been busy in a shipyard somewhere. We'll just have to wait and see. But all right, as mentioned in the news, one of the other big things to come out this past weekend was the official confirmation and a teaser in and of itself for El Camino, which was the Breaking Bad movie. They've kept this thing on ice for the better part of a year. I can remember something breaking in one of the New Mexico papers out there that somebody was shooting something. Vince Gilligan was cited. All the speculation was that it was a Breaking Bad, and nobody would ever confirm anything. And I have no idea how they've managed to keep it secret as long as they did, but they finally let the cat out of the bag that, yep, it's coming, and it's coming in October. We're done shooting, we're in post-prod, and we're ready to go. Dave, you were a big Breaking Bad guy. Are you ready for this? Is this a story you want told?
I am, and I think that depending on what they do with it, they've got this other series that came out where they go back and they look at Saul Goodman and kind of what became of and how that became. And I mean, I'll be honest, that moved really, really slow. And I know that you kind of prod me along and, oh man, you got to catch up. It does this, it does that. It just kind of moves slow. If they move at that pace, I think they'll lose a good bit of their fan base trying to go through. And Aaron Paul, that character is just one of those things where he's going to be typecast because of it. And so to get the opportunity to see him play that and see how it moves forward, I think is definitely worth getting into.
Yeah, I do know. I mean, it's going to be a movie. This is not a series. So you're going to have your story, and then it's going to be done. So there's not going to be anything to drag out. It'll either be good or it'll suck, one or the other. I will say, and I'm not going to turn this into a Better Call Saul show, but dude, the finale for Saul this past year was drop your popcorn. It was the moment that everybody's pretty well been waiting for. It was incredible, and Bob Odenkirk deserves some sort of an award for the performance that he gave, and not only that episode, but the whole season. Scott, were you a Breaking Bad guy?
I missed the boat on that one, so I'll leave this one up to the experts.
All right,
you'll need to watch that before you watch Rebels. I'm just throwing it out there. It is to watch the character development of the guy from Malcolm in the Middle, the dad from Malcolm in the Middle, and what he becomes in that show is phenomenal. I mean, it's wow.
It really is. No, I mean, it's the classic example of why most television shows have no business going past 5 years. Know your story, know its beginning, know its end, and end it when it's time. And you can, from time to time, strike lightning in a bottle and get stuff like that. No, it was amazing. I mean, it really, really was. It took me a little while to get into it, but man, once the ball gets rolling, it never stops, and it just sucks you in every week. It's very much a show that is made to be binged. I can't fathom, because I got into it late, so I think the last season was pretty well the only one that I watched as it aired. But being able to burn through it episode after episode, it reminded me a lot of 24 from back in the day. I mean, just every episode ended and your jaw was just on the floor and you had to wait a whole nother week. Only now you don't. Really, really, really top flight stuff. So yeah, I'm excited to see what this is about. I mentioned at the outset of this segment that there was a teaser trailer that is also on our Facebook page and our Twitter feed. So in case you guys haven't noticed, we post a lot of good stuff there. So definitely give us a follow. It's okay. We'll kind of segue in out of that. There was the matter of a little football game that was played this weekend. And Dave, you were there for that. You had a stake in that. So I'm going to lead with you on this. Florida, Miami. Give me your thoughts on the on-the-field product, the game, highs, lows, whatnot. But then what was it like to be down there? How was the atmosphere? How was the crowd?
So, I mean, the game itself, I think both teams are trying to feel each other out. Miami's got a new offense that's going on. I think that if you look at what happened in that game, I was joking around with some of the fans around me and said, man, if we can just get some motion out of our offense, I'd be happy. Like, first thing they did was shift both tight ends and a wide receiver. It was like, all right, cool. That's where I was here at. And that first drive, it looked fantastic. They went down. It stalled towards the end because of some poor play from some freshman tackles. But overall, I think that both teams have a lot to build on from there. I think that Miami, the defense did well. They held Florida to well under 100 yards rushing. Franks had about 250 yards passing. So the defense held up pretty well, gave up 24 points to an offense that had all of its receivers returning, had a decent quarterback that did well last year and a decent running back that did well last year. But to look at the talent that Miami has on offense, how it's going to work within that system, and to see that this is probably the hardest team they're going to play in the regular season. They're not going to play a better defense. They may play a little better offense in some cases going through, but they're going to have the opportunity to move forward. The game itself was phenomenal, back and forth. I got the chance. I mean, obviously, I wish for a better outcome at the end of it, but I'm happy with what we're looking at going forward. It's definitely a bright future if it continues to trend in the way that I see it going so far. As for the product off the field and just kind of the environment around it, I think this is going to be unique. You and I have talked about neutral site games and how much you don't like them. Having been able to experience one in person, how I think this one's unique is Miami is, 3.5, 4 hours away?
Right.
Gainesville's 2.5 hours away. I think it's unique in that, you don't have people from Alabama traveling to Atlanta, so there's a 5 or 6 hour trek, and then whoever they're playing has a 4 or 5 hour trek to try and get to where they're going, and then people are trying to get airfare. And I mean, quite honestly, anyone coming from Florida, and the stadium was about 65-35, maybe 60-40 Florida. Right. They really could have driven over, and when the game was done, just got in their car and driven home. Right. So I'm not always a big fan. I think that they can work in the neutral site stuff when both teams, like, Florida State's playing Boise. Obviously, Florida State typically travels well, but we'll see because their season tickets have dropped 20,000 this year.
Yep.
And then you got Boise coming from the Midwest all the way to Jacksonville, with a hurricane possibly coming through, obviously now. But I think neutral site games can work, but only if you have both fan bases within a short distance going through. There was great tailgates. My girlfriend had never really dealt with tailgates in the South other than Florida State before. Right. And she made the comment, man, I thought Florida State fans were crazy at their tailgates. We walked around to a few. There was a couple of tailgates that had purchased their own DJs. They had DJs in place. They had one of them had an ice sculpture in 90-degree heat. I mean, not bright, but definitely interesting. So she was like, man, that was just crazy. So it wasn't bad there. I think that both schools got the opportunity, both fan bases got an opportunity to get in place, do some things. The game itself was fun, and I had a great opportunity on Saturday morning to be able to go up to the Magic Kingdom and sit behind the scenes and kind of watch the game day do their deal. And which I've done a few times, but as a fan this time instead of working in a different capacity with them. And that was a lot of fun. Got to meet Michael Irvin, which for me was a lot of fun. And just 12 hours earlier, he was looking like he had ingested something to make himself extremely excited. It was filmed on stage. Love him to death, but sometimes stereotypes are hard to beat. So
he's just 50 now? 52?
He is. Yeah, he's in his 50s.
Way to keep living the dream, man. Mm-hmm. You mentioned something earlier about Florida State and season tickets being down 20,000. Well, really, what do you have to look forward to? You just took what should have been one of your marquee games on the schedule and shipped it on down to Jacksonville. So, question stands, how's Miami's season tickets looking this year? I would imagine they're up because you've got a first-year head coach. But, what does that look like? How many more have you sold if Florida comes to town, and then vice versa, you get to go to the Swamp next year? That's what college football is. That's what it should be. I hate neutral site games. I don't want anything to do with them. I'm not traveling. There's plenty of stuff I have reason to go to New Orleans, let's say. I love going to New Orleans just because New Orleans is awesome. I go to New Orleans if Florida State's playing in the Sugar Bowl. I have zero desire to go watch Florida State play LSU in New Orleans. I would much rather go to Baton Rouge and sit in their stadium and hang out with their fans and see how their culture does it, and then have them come down to Tallahassee and we get to show them how we do it at Doak Campbell. That is the beating heart of college football, and when you take it away and you stick it in these sterile-ass environments where nobody really cares as far as the town, it's your pro football, you're the NFL light at that point. And I'm just not, that is not for me. I'm not behind it. And if I'm a season ticket holder, I'm looking at them saying, well, I'm not driving to Jacksonville, and I'm looking at the slate of games that I got left. Not really interested in NC State, Louisiana Monroe, Alabama State, whomever. I'm sorry, I'm just not really feeling the need to shell out big bucks to come down and watch that. Great, I get Miami at home. That's the only game I get. So I'm going to buy a one-off ticket for that game if I can get it. And if I can't, I'm going to chill at the house and watch it on TV.
Yeah, one of the interesting things that has come out of this hurricane right now is they are discussing possibly moving the game to Doak, because if you're going to do it on Saturday, the hurricane's supposed to come in sometime within the 24 hours around the game, after the games come through. So they are talking about the possibility of moving the game back to Doak. I mean, it'd be interesting to see what they do with all that, how they decide they want to do tickets. But, I mean, you may get your wish after all.
We'll see. I've heard the more likely option for that is they may bump the game back up to noon and just keep it in Jacksonville. I know a lot of the models have the wind starting to kick up mid-afternoon. So, the big brunt of it probably won't get there until that evening, which there are a lot of models that have it slamming that area right as kickoff is getting ready to have, and you can't have that. So they may, if they can bump it back to noon, you may be fine. And correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm not down there anymore, but this has not reached hurricane status yet, right? It's a tropical storm?
Yeah. So it's supposed to strengthen over the next couple of days, and then it's got to make its way through the islands there before it heads back in between the gap between Florida and the islands, and we'll see where it goes from there. But
by the time this airs, we should have a pretty good bit of clarity on that. So
yeah.
All right, Dave, running down Miami's schedule, man. Have you got any more losses on the board? What is your take on that?
I really think that Florida's going to be the best team we play, unless there's some market improvement from Florida State this year, and Virginia's going to be one of those deals. I think we played them at home though, which is going to be a big boon for us. But when it comes to the overall schedule, I mean, this really is the hardest game we play. And then
you play in the ACC Coastal.
Correct. I mean, that's one of the beautiful things about that.
You might as well be Conference USA.
Oh, see, now we came over to try and help y'all out in the early 2000s, and this is how you decide you want to treat us. That's not
how
very
has
nice.
how has that worked out, dude? I'm going to tell you something right here and right now. They hate you up here in the Triangle because all they heard about up here on Tobacco Road was Miami's coming to the ACC. That's the last great power that we need to add to Florida State and Clemson, so people will actually respect this piece of crap conference as a football conference. Miami has done jack to help build that reputation. With the 1 year that you skated out 10 wins and went to, have you won a Coastal Crown yet? Did you win one?
Nope. Yeah, we won one a couple years ago.
So that was 1 year you won your division. They don't like you up here, just for that. They are very much, the Miami Hurricanes elicits a mini eye roll on Tobacco Road. Just trust me on that.
Well, my friend, what I can tell you is this. They can join a long list of people. They can kiss my ass. And that would include the third world announcer, Paul Feinbaum.
Well, we can all agree that guy's a tool.
Don't really care what Tobacco Road thinks. We like it when Duke comes down and gets their ass handed to them by us down in Miami
Duke
in basketball.
Even Duke fans don't care about Duke football. So I'll tell you that right now.
we like beating them in basketball every couple of years too. It's always a good time. So, not really worried about it. We're doing our thing. We definitely got some probation. And as I text you Saturday when you kind of sent your condolences on the way through, the most Miami thing that could have happened on Saturday, and that is we picked off a pass to give ourselves a great opportunity to win a game. Only to have a legacy player whose father and both uncles played at the University of Miami turn and shoot the double birds at the quarterback while he lay on the ground, costing us 15 yards, great field position, and more than likely the best opportunity we had to win that game at the end. So, God bless you, Al Blades. You wear that orange and green well, sir.
Well, there was a lot of stupidity happening on that field that evening, not the least of which was coming from Florida quarterback Feliepe Franks, who, man, that guy's a piece of work.
Holy
He's got a lot of Wakulla in him.
Oh, man. I was in my zone. Watch me throw this pick on first down with 4 minutes to go. I have yet to get clarity on whether that was actually Dan Mullen's call or whether that kid just took it upon himself to drop back and gun it. Regardless, somebody was stupid.
Yeah, there was a dumb decision made on that play.
Oh,
well, I had said going into that play that if they really wanted to try and take the heart out, that they would go deep. They had just not, but had to have been the drive before that. They hit that seam play up the right side and almost scored the touchdown. They got like 60 yards, 40 yards out of it. And I really think that everyone was expecting them to run, go through. We were going to try and stop that to get the next play. Had they done a very similar play, it would have been one-on-one on the inside on a safety with someone with a lot of speed, and they probably would have hit something high down the field and would have taken the heart out of that game completely at the end of it, where instead he threw a flats pass, just at the line of scrimmage, and it got picked off. And, Yeah, he was still talking after the game, though. Good for him. That's nice. I hope we get to play them at the end of the year after we've gotten the chance to really get this offense going.
Yeah, I got a question on him coming up in the 2-minute drill later, so I'm gonna save that. But one of the things we did with Schlabach was kind of go a little bit more macro and look a little deeper into the season. Obviously, a lot of the talk was about the SEC, the Big Ten, and the ACC because, frankly, that's where all the powers are. I'm interested to see what's going to happen in the Big 12 with Jalen Hurts in Oklahoma. Maybe Texas can do something there, but for the most part, it comes down to those three conferences. Right off the bat, and everybody does this at the beginning of the season, even though it means absolutely nothing, but we still do it anyway because we love to. Give me your 4 teams that you've got going to the playoff at the end of the year.
Yeah, I'm looking at the usual suspects in Alabama and Clemson. Oklahoma probably doesn't get challenged in their regular season, and then of course due to their preseason rankings, they'll stay near the top. It'd be interesting to see if the Big Ten can have a team come out of there. Again, I don't know if that's going to be a Penn State or if that's going to be an Ohio State that actually decides that somebody actually wants to do something and make some noise in the Big Ten this year. But outside of that, I think Georgia, you got to look back at the SEC and take a look at what Georgia can do this year.
Dave, how about you? Who are you eyeballing?
There's only 2 teams that matter. It's Alabama and Clemson. The other, you might as well just call them Team 3 and Team 4. It's just not going to matter. You can put Penn State, Ohio State, Michigan, whoever. It does not matter who you put in that team.
Come on, man! I put a lot of thought into that answer.
And I'm glad you did, sir. Awesome. But it doesn't matter who you put in there. No one's going to keep up. This is like watching, some of these dynasty teams, like watching the Patriots, like watching the Canes from the '80s, the early 2000s. Whoever the backup is just as good as that guy. He just hadn't played as much college football. He's got just as much talent. He's your 4-star, your 5-star. He's going to be playing in the NFL in some capacity in the next 2 to 3 years. It's not going to matter. And until they can solve that issue, until Saban can go away, until Dabo, someone can catch up with him going through, because they do play in that weak division. Yeah, they play in the ACC where no one's really challenging them, so they can skate through their entire schedule for the most part and not play anybody. It's just not going to matter who's Team 3 and Team 4.
I agree with that. I do. Until somebody says otherwise, it is all Clemson and Alabama's world. I am interested to see what the Jalen Hurts experiment is going to look like in Oklahoma. Part of it is just because I'm rooting for that kid. In this day and age now of the transfer portal where kids just decide, oh, look, I've lost my starting job. Peace out. I'm going to transfer. This is a kid that didn't do that. He stayed, and he said, I'm going to be here if my team needs me. And they did. By the end of the season, Tua got hurt, and they did need him. And he came in, put a Superman cape on, and saved the day. Now he's going to go get tutelage from a guy who's produced the last 2 Heisman Trophy winners. This is a guy that knows how to run an offense and knows how to teach the quarterback position. So I'm interested to see what this is going to be like. I really, really am. I want to see what those 2 guys do together. I want to see what he does in that offense. I know Mark and others have suggested that Hurts really seemed to demonstrate that he had advanced his skills as a passer by the end of last year. Maybe. I don't know that you have enough of a sample size to be able to say definitively that that's the case, but you're going to find out this year. And there is no better coach in college football than Lincoln Riley to help him hone those skills. So, couple that with the fact that nobody plays defense in the Big 12, and it's going to be fun to see how that plays out. Now, whether or not they could run the table and then compete with one of the teams that we talked about, I don't know. We'll just have to wait and see. I am interested to see what Harbaugh is going to do this year. We talked about this with Mark. It's put up or shut up time for him. This has got to be the year he does it. If he can't do it this year, he might as well just pack his bags and get out of Ann Arbor. And that's a really stark contrast to what we expected when he arrived from San Francisco. It was the sun comes home. Everybody expected, dude, Urban Meyer, Jim Harbaugh, this is going to be a war year in and year out for the Big Ten. And it hasn't materialized. So I'm going to be interested to see what Michigan has to say about all of this before all is said and done by the end of the season. And then lastly, I really want to see what Georgia does. I know Mark says that Kirby isn't on the hot seat down there, and he's not. It's going to take some time. But, I mean, those people, they don't shell out big dollars and support Georgia football to finish second in the SEC every stinking year. If Kirby can't do it this year or next year, because I know Bama loses Tua and a whole slew of other people after this season to the draft and graduation, if Kirby can't do it one of those 2 years, then I think people start raising a little bit of an eyebrow down there at Athens and wonder if maybe he can, if he can do it, if he can take them to that next level. So we'll see. I mean, it's going to be interesting to watch all of that play out. But all right, what do you guys say in the spirit of football season and football talk? We hit up a little 2-minute drill.
Let's go.
The 2-minute drill.
All right, Dave, we'll start with you. Miami will challenge Virginia for the ACC Coastal Crown in year one under Manny Diaz.
Do you need a verbal response from me on this?
I've already got it.
Hoo-ah!
Absolutely, Miami will challenge for the Coastal. Not only will they challenge, they will win it to get throttled by Clemson again in the ACC championship game.
Scott, what say you? Miami will challenge Virginia for the ACC Coastal Crown this year.
I'll say yes on this one. I think this is definitely.
Hoo-ah!
I saw enough out of Miami on Saturday night to know that they've got a talented team. They're going to give some teams, especially in the ACC, some fits. They've got to figure out how to tackle. They've got to figure out how to clean up some of the mistakes. But those two things are definitely coachable things that can get better over time.
Okay. Well, I'm going to make it the trifecta.
Hoo-ah!
I do believe they are going to challenge Virginia. I don't think there's anybody else worth a fart in the wind in the Coastal that's worth even talking about. I do, however, think Virginia is a good squad. Really, really good defense, veteran-laden squad. They've had a number of years now under Bronco Mendenhall to get their act together. And I think if there was ever a year that they could do something, it's this year. I also know there are some people who quietly think Pittsburgh could be decent. Don't know about that myself. We'll have to wait and see. All right, question number 2. Scott, I'll start with you on this one. At some point this season, University of Florida quarterback Feliepe Franks will get booed again by his own fans.
I'm definitely calling this a score.
Hoo-ah!
It almost happened in the game that was played on Saturday.
Dave, how about you? What do you think of Feliepe Franks? Does he get booed again?
I think we all know Florida fans well enough to know that's a score.
Hoo-ah!
And I will be so bold as to say that I believe it will happen in the Swamp in November against Florida State.
Big words. I hope you're right on that one. Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and go in for the trifecta myself.
Hoo-ah!
Question number 3. Alabama will face a legitimate challenge from other teams in the SEC this year for the conference crown.
Hoo-ah!
Yes, however, I think that while Georgia will probably give them somewhat of a hassle, I think that their legitimate challenge is actually going to come from LSU.
All right, Scott, what say you? Will Alabama face legitimate competition in the SEC this year?
I'll agree with Dave on that one.
Hoo-ah!
Again, I think there's a legitimate shot from LSU and possibly even Texas A&M. I know, not being a huge fan of Jimbo, might come out a little bit in this evaluation, but LSU definitely has a legitimate shot at challenging Alabama this year.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with that, and I'll go in, sure.
Hoo-ah!
I think Bama could face competition from Georgia this year. I'm also looking at LSU. I get it. We're going to do the spread offense in LSU. They've got a quarterback who could certainly run it and a coordinator who seems to know that system very well. We'll see if they can execute it. Texas A&M, they got a quarterback that they like in Mond, but a murderer's row of a freaking schedule. In addition to everybody that they play in the West, from Auburn to LSU to Alabama, they've also got Clemson coming to town in week 2. And then there's always that inevitable Jimbo game that they just inexplicably lose for no reason whatsoever. So I'm not that high on Texas A&M this year, despite my dislike of Jimbo, that notwithstanding. I think they've got their work cut out for them this year. Final question, sticking close to home. Scott, I'm going to start with you. Florida State will rally the troops and win at least 8 games in year 2 of Willie Taggart.
I think we've got 8 wins in this year. It's going to be a struggle to go down that route.
I purposefully put it at 8 and not 7.
That's what Vegas would do. Vegas would set the over/under at about 7.5, and then force you to go one way or the other. But I think we've got 8 games in us this year. But wouldn't be totally surprised if 7 was the total.
All right. Well, I'm still going to give you the
Hoo-ah!
There you go.
All right, Dave.
I'm optimistic. this week. It's game week.
I hear you. Dave, what do you say about the Old Noles? Can you be objective?
I'm looking at this schedule, and I actually sat down the other day with a good friend, Joe, and we were going over the schedule, and we kind of made some early looks at it. I'm going to be honest. I think Boise's going to be a loss.
Okay.
Louisiana Monroe will be a win. Virginia will be a loss. Louisville's garbage. That'll probably be a win. Yeah, NC State, that'll be a win. Clemson, Syracuse, Florida, and Miami are all losses. So where does that leave us?
Oh, definitely.
So I think that the reason why Boise is a loss, I think, is going to be that you guys are looking at a new system. Had you played Boise, it's like for us. I think had we started out with someone more of a cupcake at the beginning of the year to kind of get our offense down and get our guys ready to go a little better, maybe we would have had a different result had we played Florida midseason. I think that bringing that new offense in, trying to get it going against Boise, I really think that it's going to cause some problems, and I really think that's why Boise it will be a close loss, but I think it will be a loss.
All right. I'm going to play the optimist with Scott.
Hoo-ah!
Thank you.
Here is what I will say about this.
Homer.
No. I think the Boise State is a win. I think you end up going 2-1 in those first three. I think they're going to beat Boise, but they're going to lose in Charlottesville to Virginia. And the reason I mean, Boise State's playing a true freshman quarterback that's never played a lick of college football and just got on campus from high school. They also lost the vast majority of their defense to graduation last year. I mean, they have a ton of new people, new defensive coordinator, if I'm not mistaken. So tons and tons and tons of change at Boise State. You got to come down and play in the heat and humidity of Jacksonville, Florida. Maybe you end up in Tallahassee, but they're not accustomed to playing in that kind of climate. So put it all together, I do believe in Kendall Briles. I think the track record speaks for itself. Randy Clements, from everything I can hear, is doing a great job with the offensive line. I think if they can be just slightly below average this year, Florida State has the potential to really hang with some people and beat the teams that, frankly, they ought to beat. Now, they're going to get blown out against Clemson. Maybe they don't get blown out, but they're going to get severely beaten. I don't know that they can beat Florida in the swamp. It is my hope that they will have totally turned a corner by the time they play that game at the end of the year. If they opened with Florida, I'd say, no, that's a loss. Easy peasy. Mm-hmm. But by the end of the year, lots changes. So I'm gonna play the optimist and say 8. I think Florida State fans will be happy, kinda okay with 7. Below that, it's time to have a different conversation about your coach. I don't know that Willie Taggart needs to be in Tallahassee for year 3 if you can't at least get 7. Not with this schedule being what it is. I am not convinced that Miami is a loss. Not just saying that because I'm a homer and I'm a Florida State guy. I just watch quarterback get the crap beat out of him. And I do believe that our defense is going to have some things to say about our opponents moving through the course of the year. I love our secondary. We've got some young guys at linebacker that I think could make some noise by the end of the season. It's all going to come down to depth. That's what we don't have in Tallahassee. And if we get injured, then all hell breaks loose and you could be staring down the barrel of another horrible season. And in that instance, maybe Willie gets a bit of a pass because injuries you can't work around that. But particularly at the line of scrimmage, offensive and defensive line, they can't have anybody hurt. But if they're healthy, I think they made the coaching changes this year that they could quietly make some noise and beat some people. And that's why I say I think 8 wins is there. Yeah. So, all right, guys.
I'd agree that the list of ifs around Florida State this year are not as long as they have been in past years. Yeah. So if this happens, if this happens, if this happens, yep. That list has gotten shorter, and so that gives me a little bit of optimism.
Yep, wholly agree. Well, it's going to be nice to be the underdog. Nobody expects jack squat out of us, and I'm perfectly okay with that. It's a good time. All right, fellas, we're beating on the hour here, so let's go ahead and wrap things up with White Flag.
White Flag.
Okay, White Flag is the segment where we look ahead to stuff that's coming up in the next couple of weeks, be it geek stuff, sports stuff, guys stuff, you name it. It's whatever's on our radar. So, Scott, what's got you psyched up? What are you looking forward to coming up?
Right now, we've got, obviously, college football, top priority, Florida State this weekend, but looking for the NFL season to kick off, as well as got notification today that The Good Place, Season 3, showing up on Netflix. So, happy to cruise through that again and watch that one. And then, obviously, I've got some to-dos on the Rebels if I can track that down and watch that, as well as catching up on Breaking Bad. So those are probably the things that I'm looking at in the next couple weeks.
All right, Dave, how about you, man? What's going on?
I'm sorry, did you say The Good Place? I don't believe I've heard of that porn.
That's just wrong, man. That is so wrong.
Come on, man. Ted Danson. It's good stuff.
Is he still around?
Yeah.
Oh, my
It's
friend,
good.
I'm so pleased you're not dead.
All right.
This is the reason why I'm on this podcast, Dave, is to make you aware of things that you don't know.
It's not
Okay.
soccer, man. Give him a pass.
It is
I
not
didn't even
soccer.
mention it. I did not bring it up.
It's a good place.
But if you give me another 30 seconds, I will.
No, we're good. No.
Dave.
Silence that microphone. Holy crap. September 6th, It Chapter 2 comes out. You know, something that manly men go to, something that manly men can enjoy that's not about kicking a little white ball around. Also, on October 4th, we have Joker movie coming out, and we have officially gotten an R rating on that. We talked about that a couple of podcasts ago. I'm extremely excited about that. And of course, not so excited about the NFL season as I am the college football season, but I'm definitely excited about my fantasy football team, something else men do, Scott, and how it will probably win the championship this year.
I do have a fantasy football team.
Taking a break from fantasy football this year.
You can shift your ire in Ian's direction.
Did you draft Ted Danson on said team?
I did.
I figured
And
as
Andrew
much.
Luck.
Sunday, wanna go where everybody knows your name. All right, White Flag, I am looking forward to Darlington this weekend in NASCAR land. It's throwback weekend for the Southern 500. That is a big, big deal on the NASCAR calendar. Other thing I'm looking forward to is seeing how the Matt DiBenedetto story plays out. For those who have been following me on Twitter, at Ian J. Malone, you know me. I've been tweeting a lot about this. This is a neat guy and probably one of the biggest stories in NASCAR for the year. This is a guy who is the opposite of the trend in NASCAR. These days, if you don't show up with a sponsor behind you or a famous name like Elliott or Earnhardt, you really don't have a prayer of landing a big-time ride. This is a guy who gutted it out through small-time, underfunded teams, moms and pop stuff, and gradually got more and more and more results until he landed the ride that he's in now with Toyota, which is existentially funded by Joe Gibbs Racing. It's Levine Family Racing. They're a small-time outfit, but they've got big backers behind them. It's the best opportunity this guy's ever had. All he's done is gone out and produced. He has given this team more success than they've ever seen in their history, and he got handed his pink slip last week. And the reason for that is because Toyota and Joe Gibbs have an uber prospect coming out of the Xfinity Series, which is NASCAR's AAA baseball, and they want him in a seat, and there is no seat at Gibbs, and so they're giving him mats over in the 95 car. Everybody understands the business side of this and how it played out. It doesn't change the fact that it absolutely sucks what happened to him. And after the story broke, my man came out at Bristol last week in driver intros wearing the Rocky Balboa robe and to the Rocky music because he's full
White flag.
His middle name is Guido. And proceeded to almost win the race. He finished second. Had Ryan Newman not gotten in his way, he would have won the race. The weekend after he was told, you're fired. Thanks, we'd love to keep you, but we've got another guy with more money and you've got to go. So lots of eyeballs on DiBenedetto. And I know I kind of drugged that out, but it really is a neat story. And he is a neat guy. And I really, really do hope that guy lands on his feet somewhere because NASCAR needs guys like him in their sport. He's a good one. So definitely looking forward to some NASCAR coming up. Of course, college football season, the Knowles play this weekend. Hoping to get some clarity on that between now and the time this episode drops as to whether that's going to be at 8, whether it's going to be at 7, whether it's going to be at noon in Jacksonville, whether they move it to Tallahassee and Campbell Stadium. I just hope it gets played. I'm tired of these deals where your whole year gets thrown off because you miss a game. So safety first. Definitely want everybody to be safe, but if we can find a way to get the game in, I really do want that to happen. And then, of course, the NFL season's coming back in a couple of weeks. Looking forward to seeing what that is, what my Buccaneers are, and I'm sure we'll have a whole episode devoted to that. So, guys, thank you as always for tagging along. Thank you to our listeners. If you love the show, by all means, leave it a review. You know how much we love those. 5 stars preferably, and if you can leave a blurb, do it. Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Stitcher, we don't care where it is. Wherever you subscribe to podcasts, if they can let you leave a review, if you do it for us, we really, really do appreciate that. For questions, you know the ways to get involved with us. Email, Facebook, Twitter. We love those. We'll feature those in our next Dude Mail segment. And if you for some reason want to advertise with us, we'll take your money. Dudesandhyperspace.com is where you find information on how you want to do that. So good times as always, fellas. Thank you, and we will see you guys next time for episode 8. See ya.
See ya.